Hello and welcome to this week's edition of The Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher. If you've just discovered this programme, the aim is to bring you the stories of believers in Jesus living in Israel and the West Bank today to help us understand what God is doing there despite the ongoing tension in the region. Schmuel Salway lives in Tel Aviv. He's an Israeli Jew with an Indian background. Aged 18, he joined the army, this is mandatory in Israel for the majority of young people, and served his 3 years. He then went to live and work in New York, but all the time he knew that one day he would return to Israel to live. Schmuel takes up his story.
Several years ago, I was there in New York for 3 years, and I got an extension to stay for more years, which was very rare. But I always knew that God wanted me back because of my connection with the youth, because of understanding the need of people who are Messianic Jews here in Israel to serve Him. It wasn't very easy. It wasn't an easy choice. But I prayed about it, and I knew that God wanted me to come back, and I came back to the land, and I really prayed about what God was wanting me to do. And I tried to hook up. The first thing was I tried to find a Messianic congregation in Tel Aviv. And there were several in Tel Aviv. And what God led me for was a congregation called Adonai Ro'i. He was led by a pastor called Avi Mizrahi. And I really felt that that's the congregation God wanted me to go. And the pastor didn't know me that well. But after a few weeks, he said, "Shmuel, I heard that you have been working with the youth for many years, and our youth pastor just left." Actually, there was that's a funny story. It was a little revolt that the youth did against this youth pastor, and he just lifted his hands up and quit. I'm sure he did. He was a man of God, and it wasn't necessarily his fault. But I came and he asked me if I could pick up the pieces of this little revolt group and become one of the youth leaders, become the youth leader. There's no other youth leaders. And he just heard that I've been working with youth for many years, and he asked me to come. And that was a volunteer position. I was just helping out on this Saturdays. It's like the Sunday meetings here in Israel, Shabbat meetings, working with the youth. And that's when Avi asked me, after a few months of doing that, he said, "Would you like to come full-time and help me in the ministry, in Dugit ministry?" And I prayed about it, and I just knew that before he asked, that God wanted me to serve Him, and that was an opportunity to work in full-time ministry and be able to serve the youth and young adults in the land.
Did you just know that it was right? Because, frankly, to give up a well-paid job in America and come back to Israel and work as a volunteer, it's a huge sacrifice.
Yes. It took a long time for me to come around. I always knew, but I was kind of struggling with. I had some, I don't know what the word exactly is, but I had some discussions with God, and I said, "God, if this and this and this, and if this and this and this," and it's kind of like Gideon leaving the skin out there, and if it was to be wet and dry. So I needed a lot of confirmation from God to know that it was right. First of all, being in New York I asked God for this position as a security supervisor, and God allowed me to be accepted into New York, which is not that easy. And then I asked to travel around the world, and working for airlines, you get free tickets. So I managed to travel all around the world and visit continents like Africa and Australia and Thailand, New Zealand and South America. I got a lot of traveling, which was on my heart to do. And I wanted to be able to live in a foreign country like New York and get a good sound. And God allowed me to do all these things, but it was a conditional. He said, "I will allow you if." And so I had my ifs, and God had His ifs. So I said, "If you do this and this and this," and God was faithful in all of those. And when I did come back to the land, I was working with a youth group. I tried to get together different youth groups in the Tel Aviv area. And my wife was a youth leader back then she wasn't my wife. She was working. She was a youth leader for a different congregation. And when we got together and got all the youth together in a joint intercity youth group, that's when I met my wife. And so when I was obedient and came back to the land, not only did I start working full-time in the ministry serving the youth and young adults, I also got to meet my wife. And my wife, Susie, she's also Tzabar, native-born Israeli. And now we're blessed to have a baby. We have a girl who's 3 and a baby boy who's a few months old.
You're now the associate pastor here at Dugit. So tell me what an average week is for you.
After 7 years of being full-time working with youth, I got, I don't know if you call it promotion, but God increased my territory. I'm now the associate pastor in Adonai Roy congregation. What that means is, that means I say this Shabbat, this coming Saturday, I'm giving the message at the service. We're going to be praying for a new baby boy that's dedicated him to the Lord. And during the week, I'm here in the office taking care of the regular things that the ministry does, including receipts and bills and all that things, and handling the staff. But during the week, I have midweek meetings, so it's with the youth. Today is a Thursday. I'm meeting with the intercity youth group that I help lead. So that's what I'm doing today. Saturday, I'm giving the message. Hopefully tomorrow I'll have some time to work and finish my message for Saturday for Shabbat. And during the week, we meet with the young adults, and because our congregation is mainly young adults, but we also have a few couples. Me and my wife, we meet with several young adults during the week, pray with them, and we have a home group that meets every Tuesday of young adults, and we study the Bible. We're going through the book of Hebrews right now, chapter by chapter, and studying Hebrews together.
Now, Dugit is the name of the congregation. It means little fishing boats. Started in 1993. You have a coffee shop. You're involved in street outreach. You have you sell a lot of Messianic material. You're more than just a congregation.
Yeah, the congregation is called Adonai Ro'i. It's the Lord is my shepherd in Hebrew from Psalm 23. And the ministry is called Dugit. Dugit is a small fishing boat like the time of Yeshua. And Yeshua called us to be fishers of men. So we are fishers of men here in Tel Aviv. Our calling is our vision is to preach the gospel and make disciples. So the disciples are discipled in the congregation, but we need to get the people into the congregation. And that's why we have these outreaches. One of the outreaches is the coffee shop outreach, where we offer free coffee to people, invite them to come and hear what the Messianic faith is all about, hear about Yeshua, hear how they can have a relationship with God. We have live music events, and Tel Aviv is a lot of young people, a lot of secular people. So we have live music events, whether it's jazz, blues, or any sort of music. People come in and ask what this place is about. What are you guys doing? And we have a opportunity to share. We do have groups that come, whether it's YWAM groups and groups from different places in the world, and they go out to the streets and invite people for a music event or coffee or and to hear about more. And we have volunteers. We have a distribution center where we give food and clothing to needy people. These people are just sent to us from the city, social affairs. They don't believe in Yeshua, but after they come, they hear what we're about and why we do what we do. We're able to share the gospel. We'll tell them we're Messianic Jews and we love the Bible, we love God, and we are here to help. And we give them, whether it's bags of clothes or bags of food, toiletries, we're able to practically share the love of Yeshua with them.
You're therefore seeing a lot of young people coming into congregation, hence it's a very young congregation. Are you finding there's a deep interest in Yeshua here in Tel Aviv? Are people really challenged by him?
Okay. The older generation, they have been taught or learned to stay away from New Testament, stay away from Christianity because of the history of Christianity. But I think the modern young people, they're more open. They're open to New Age, Scientology, and so they're even willing to hear about it. So if I give some young people a New Testament, then they'll think of reading it, they'll open it, and where back a few years ago they wouldn't even consider taking one, where now they will take one. Most of them would flip through and read a few chapters or all. So there is more openness in the young people. There's more awareness, whether it's through movies or from TV interviews, radio interviews with Messianic Jews the last few years in the land. So people are more aware and they're more open, especially the young people, to find out what it is. And I always challenge them. I say, I believe you're smart enough to make your own decision. Why don't you just take a copy of the New Testament or this book, read it, and let God do the work.
We always ask the question in this program, what is God doing in Israel today? What would you say to answer that, Schmuel?
I definitely see that there's more openness, and the harvest is ready in Israel. There's 20 years ago, there only a handful of believers in the land, and now there's congregations in almost every city. In Tel Aviv, at least there's 7 or 8 Messianic Hebrew-speaking congregations, and there's more openness, more young people. Even in our home group, there's at least 2 or 3 young people who are interested, who are just secular Israelis who grew up in Israel, who are more open. So God is doing something. Of course, it's just the beginning. There's more opportunities. The land is more fertile, and I think that it says the harvest is ready and the laborers are few. So we're praying for more Messianic Jews to fulfill their calling, to help out, and whether it's Gentiles around the world to come and continue to support and pray the work here in Israel, because the harvest, I believe, is ready, but the laborers are few. It says pray that God will send more laborers into the harvest.
Schmuel Salway, who's an associate pastor at one of the Messianic congregations in Tel Aviv, sharing his life story. And you're listening to The Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher. And the Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund is a Christian charity based in the UK that supports the needs of both Jewish believers and Arab Christians living in Israel and the wider Middle East. If you'd like to know more about our work and receive our free bi-monthly newsletter, please either visit our website, olivetreefund.org, or write to me, Julia Fisher, at the Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund, P.O. Box 850, Horsham, RH12 9GA in the UK. I'll be back with another story from the Olive Tree. Until then, goodbye.